Throughout the Bible, both in the Hebrew scripture and in the Christian scripture, we read about people using different postures when praying. For example, Psalm 95 mentions worshiping God and then kneeling before the Lord. And the Gospels record that Jesus himself knelt in prayer during the agony in the garden. There are also various scriptural references to standing in prayer, as when Jesus mentions both the Pharisee and the tax collector standing in the temple to pray. Several Christian authors from the first few centuries after Christ specifically mention people gathered and standing in prayer. In the Christian tradition over the centuries, kneeling was often associated with times of penance, such as Lent, and standing was associated with times of joy, such as Easter. Both postures, and others as well, can be considered appropriate bodily postures to use when praying. In addition, standing was normally considered the appropriate posture when hearing the gospel proclaimed during worship, as a sign of reverence when hearing the words of Christ. And the presiding priest or minister almost always stands when praying during communal worship. In fact, in some parts of the Christian world, Christians will stand for prayer throughout the 50 days of the Easter season as a symbol of the joy of the resurrection. During the Eucharistic celebration, or Catholic Mass, those who have received communion are encouraged to pray immediately afterwards in thanksgiving for the gift of receiving Christ sacramentally through the consecrated species. No specific posture is prescribed, so individuals may choose different reverential postures for this moment of prayer. Thus, some people may wish to pray standing, while others may choose to kneel or sit, although in some places the assembly has been encouraged to stand together as a sign of unity until after everyone has received communion. Let me note that over the course of the centuries, various factors affected the posture of prayer by those gathered for worship. In various parts of Europe and the Middle East, many Christian churches do not have any sorts of pews for the assembly to sit in. This is especially true in older Catholic churches in Rome, or Orthodox churches in Russia or Greece, for example. As a result, standing for prayer after communion is quite common. In the Catholic tradition, prior to the reforms in the Mass in the late 1960s after the Second Vatican Council, the Mass was celebrated in Latin rather than a modern language, and those in the congregation knelt when they received communion and throughout most of the Mass. As a result, many older Catholics may consider kneeling as the appropriate posture to use after communion. The reception of communion is a key moment in the Eucharistic celebration of Christian churches of all denominations. It represents a tangible moment at which an individual is united with Christ through the sacrament, and a moment that calls for reflection and prayer. It is appropriate that a Christian take time to reflect on the ritual action of receiving communion, although the particular posture individuals may use can vary.